Hello, my name is Christian Flores, and this is my presentation for class. It's called The Significance of Mexican American in the Vietnam War. So, let's get into it. Here are some pictures of the Vietnam War. And that is a lot of the pictures in the Vietnam jungle. So, here we go. The events leading up to the war, because wars don't usually just start with one event. Here we go. The decline of the French Indochina and the emergence of Ho Chi Minh, the Dien Bien Phu Battle, the 1954 Coronavirus Accords and the division of Vietnam, the Cold War, the overthrow of Ngo Dinh Diem, and also the Gulf of Tonkin incidents. And that was the one that really heightened the tensions, serving as a catalyst as increased U.S. involvement in Vietnam. So each of these events really played a huge critical role in making this war happen. And how did this relate to class? Well, several pivotal events paved the way for this war to happen, and all played a crucial role. This Vietnam War reminded me of the Spanish Coalition, one of the modules we talked about earlier in class, and particularly in the Vietnam War in a comparison to the Spanish-Mexican War, because both lasted over 20 years. Spanish-Mexican War lasted 40 years. Vietnam lasted 20 years. And they both left a huge impact forever. I mean, they both had a huge number of conflicts. A huge number of people lost their lives. Families affected. Numerous casualties and injuries. And these two events enduring the things that reshaped the entire global history. Okay, the aftermath of the Vietnam War, and why was it significant? So, the Vietnam War spanned from November 1st, 1955 to April 30th, 1975, and the huge number of lost lives. I mean, nearly 60,000 people lost their lives, 350,000 people were casualties in the United States alone, and 1 to 2 million Vietnamese lost their lives. So a huge number of people lost their lives in this absolutely bloodbath war. A huge significant thing that happened that still exists to this day is in the wake of this conflict, the Vietnam War, Congress responded by enacting the War Powers Act in 1973. Legislation mandated that the president must obtain an explicit approval from the Congress before deploying American forces in overseas conflicts. So, nowadays, how does this relate to nowadays? Well, a president can't just say, hey, let's send all our soldiers to war. Can't do that. Not even some of them. You can't do that. You must go through the Congress. They must have a vote. They must decide from there. Can't just be one person deciding on this, which is a really good thing, because you don't want to have one person decide for so many people's lives and so many families. You don't want that to happen. So it's a great thing that they enacted that. And then this war resulted in the communist victory, and the culmination of the war occurred in 1975 when communist forces seized the control of South Vietnam. This marked the end of hostilities, leading to unification of the country as the Socialist Republic of Vietnam in the next year. And just a little summary is the huge loss of lives, the lasting impact on the United States and Vietnam made the insane and lasting consequences of the Vietnam War. The legislation changes reflected the need to increase checks and balances in the deployment of military forces, shaping the post-war landscape forever, which is one of the biggest things that came from this war. Okay, significance of Mexican Americans to the Vietnam War and the actual impact of actual Mexican Americans who served in this war. Let's get into that. The significance of Mexican Americans in the Vietnam War is by the socio-economic factors that drove many to enlist. Seeking employment opportunities and educational benefits, numerous Mexican Americans saw service as a pathway to social and economic advancement. So a lot of these people, Mexican Americans, coming from Mexico, a lot of them were working in the fields when they first get here, and it was hard to find a job. So some of them decided, hey, maybe this could be a better path for us. So some of them just said, hey, let's enlist in this war and, improve our lives. It came as a cost, with individuals facing sacrifices and hardships. So, for instance, in a video testimonial that we had in class called Soldados, it went into this. A participant shared his decision to join the army and recounted his experiences in the jungle of the Vietnam. He vividly described the unsettling reality of warfare, emphasizing the empowerment some Latino soldiers felt through the act of taking lives. The insane violence led to some dark humor among soldiers, making light of the hell circumstances they faced in this war. So basically, what that means is just a lot of soldiers would make light of the situation, but they were kind of going crazy if you really think about it, because there was a part in the video that he went into depth about the jokes they would make, and then one said that they shot one of the Vietnamese soldiers, and then they kind of like just messed around and cut the ear off, and then kind of made a necklace of it, and just things like that made this war kind of crazy, just because that's not how humans usually think. It's just a crazy thing to think about. So, notably, a soldier expressed a moment where he faced the prospect of death. So there was a soldier that was about to die, a Mexican American one. He prayed and spared from such a fate, vowing to pick cotton for the rest of his life. Many soldiers, predominantly field workers, found themselves against Vietnamese field workers as well. And these, at the same time, it was just a thing where they were trying to find a way to improve their lives, and it just came at a very big cost of going to war and affecting lives forever. Upon returning home, these soldiers were faced with profound trauma, finding themselves deeply affected and in some cases programmed for violence forever. The war left an undeniable mark on Mexican American veterans, altering them in ways that persisted long after their return, a reminder of the profound impact of the Vietnam War on individuals from diverse backgrounds. So this war affected everyone that was in it, families, and a lot of people that were just in this war affected. And this video kind of just went into depth about Mexican Americans, why they were in the war, why they decided that they should be in this war, and what they felt after being in it, and just describing more of a human aspect of it, of like what they had to deal with when they got home. And then the enduring consequences of the Vietnam War had profound and lasting impacts on Mexican Americans and Latinx communities. So on that prompt, I basically was going into more about what the video Soldados talked about in class, and the mental health aspect of this. So, again, a number of soldiers faced Mexican Americans, dealt with huge trauma, and they were also programmed to kill. So during this war, the boot camps were insane, and they were more extensive than any other boot camps that the United States has put out, because this was a war where they were just gruesomely getting ready for this war. And that led to a lot of these soldiers being okay with killing people, because it happened all the time on the battlefield, and they just got used to it, and they actually started feeling good about it, which is crazy. And the desire for combat. So basically, when soldiers came back from this war, they found a purpose. They couldn't find a purpose in their civilian life anymore. They wanted to be in war, which is crazy. They were programmed so much that they wanted to be in this war again, and they didn't want to be home anymore. And then regret and reflection, many of those soldiers and Mexican and Latinx backgrounds spoke openly about the regret they felt regarding the acts of killing during war, and the remorse highlighted the moral and ethical challenges faced by those who participated in conflict. The long-term repercussions of the war lingered in the mental and emotional well-being of the soldiers, influencing their prospective relationships and quality of life. Experiences recounted in Soldados underscored the enduring impact of war on the individuals who served, emphasizing the need of ongoing support and understanding for their challenges. Okay, so this one, how was this event different in school or at home? And why do you feel like it was previously learned was accurate or not? So basically, I went into it and I said, I previously studied the Vietnam War, considering it a pivotal event in our country's history. High school history classes extensively covered this war, dedicating it to an entire section to it. The Vietnam War, recognized as one of the largest conflicts, spanned 2 decades. It has always been presented as a very highly controversial chapter in history. While my high school education provided a comprehensive overview of this class specifically gave me very different perspectives and different research that I was not aware of before this class, particularly sharing the light of unique experiences of Latinos in the Vietnam War. This added dimensions offered an understanding that went beyond the narratives and I encountered earlier. It emphasized the importance of diverse perspectives in the full scope of historical events, challenging and expanding my initial understanding of this significant chapter in our history. So basically, this class has taught me that this war had different perspectives that I never saw. So by saying that, in high school, this war was taught as a war that, they would just say, hey, this many people died, this many people did this many people enlisted. This war actually went into depth about certain people that were in that war and how that affected their families and how they still faced trauma afterwards and things like that of that nature. Things that aren't really talked about in a history book because they don't go into things like that. So that's what I really liked about this class, that was really interesting to learn about all that. Okay. Discuss, has the historical events been portrayed or taught in the way that is inaccurate or only presents one side of the story. So the depth of the Vietnam War was not only fully explored in my initial readings and learning experiences. The narratives I encountered typically portrayed a glorified version of the United States entering the war. However, this class has exposed me to more of a different side of the story, going into mental health struggles faced by the returning soldiers and the nature of conflict. The Vietnam War was not simply a historic war, but a controversial one and an avoidable one. And the research illustrated by protests such as the SDS organized a march against the Vietnam War in Washington, D.C., which drew 15,000 people to 20,000 participants. These demonstrations had widespread dissent and the belief that the war should not have occurred. So there's many people protesting this war, extremely controversial war, and people, even these protesters, anti-war people, would make little escapes and underground railroads that would help people that didn't want to be in this war make an escape to Canada, places like that, just to get away so they don't have to participate in a war that they just didn't believe in. The revelation of soldiers returning with mental illnesses adds to a human dimension to this narrative, challenging the notion of victory in war. The class discussions and insights from actual soldiers provided a stark contrast to the sanitized versions presented in the history books. This became clear that the war, even when perceived as great results for one country, has profound losses for all involved, emphasizing the costliness of armed conflicts. This newfound perspective has led me to the conclusion that war is not the solution, and the Vietnam War serves as a reminder that nobody truly emerges victorious from these wars and conflicts. And then this slide goes into ethnic studies. So, ethnic studies, as emphasized in the New Latino Studies Reader, which is the book we've read, holds a significance due of collective pride emerging not only from Latinos, but also within various ethnic groups. So I like this book because it talked not just about Latinos, but it talked about other, ethnic groups too. And here's a little quote I liked. The unity celebrated by immigrants and long-time residents from diverse places like Mexico, Puerto Rico, and Dominican Republic, adopting the terms Latinos, parallels the emerge of ethnic identities such as Asian Americans among those from China, Japan, Korea in the 1970s. So it's basically like saying, in my perspective, this is pretty cool because it says, these people that come from this these people that come from different countries give themselves a term, and that gives them pride, because that term gives you pride. I believe like Latinos, when you say Mexico, Puerto Rico, and Dominican, they're a group, they're from a different area of this world, but they're here and they all relate to each other in that way, such as Asian Americans, China, Japan, Korea. We see them as a group, even though they're different, they are grouped together, which is really cool because that brings a pride aspect to this. Importance of ethnic studies lies in the capacity to offer a fresh and unique perspective, given the inherent diversity in life experiences and values among enriching our understanding of varied human experiences. Due to this, history can be seen as more intriguing due to a person being from there or still having family from there in a certain country. this class has opened my eyes, and I've learned so much in it. Ethnic studies are great. So basically, I'm gonna summarize this paragraph right here. And I just really like that ethnic studies does that. It gives you a different perspective that I have never seen before, and I'm sure it's like this for all of these study groups, not just Latino, but Asian American studies, Black American studies, all these ethnic groups. It's amazing that you could see a different perspective that they're teaching, and it's one that's more relatable. Because if you really think about it, I relate to this class because there's certain things, my family is from Mexico, things like that, and it's just really cool to see history behind that. Because in high school there wasn't really classes like that. They didn't really talk about stuff like this, but this class specifically to go into depth about problems like this, and good and bad, it's really cool. And I think that all ethnic study classes are very important, and I'm glad that they teach them because this is a very important thing to learn. And they give you great perspectives and a very relatable ideas behind them. So that's what I get from this. And here are more pictures of the war. If you see on the right corner, that's the protests that were taking place for this Vietnam War. And then here are my sources. So with that being said, thank you for listening in. It was great to do this presentation, and I learned a lot, and thank you for your time. Thank you so much.